inside my head. I try to turn it down, but I can't quite drown it out. I'm tortured every
Welcome.
day.
Thanks so much for joining us today. You're listening to Society Bites Radio, and I'm your host, Dr. Richard Himmer.
And I'm Cheri Himmer, and this is Authentically You, social interaction for the mind and soul.
For the next 25 minutes, we're going to talk about healing and growth from the inside out. Remember, you are 100% responsible for your happiness, joy, and well-being.
So we are into week 1 million, it feels like, in quarantine and being close with our loved ones with no break in sight. And things are just now in certain places in the country starting to open up, which is, a relief. And we're just praying and hoping that everyone is safe and well and getting through all of this. But we notice that, and we hear that a lot of families have noticed that there's tensions in their homes that they wish weren't there, that there's levels of toxicity. And being, go through that confinement just kind of brings some things to the surface. And so how do you address toxicity within a family when you kind of feel like, oh, I've had way too much of a particular person,
Right.
And I'm not dealing with it well, and I'm in my mind saying I can't change them, but I just feel overwhelmed with maybe a person or two.
What I'm noticing is the irritants that were before the corona quarantine have exacerbated.
Yeah.
So they're getting, more magnified because the intensity, enclosed in a home without being able to get out of it, is magnifying the challenges. People are more in resistance. Now, this is outside the fact that suicide rates have gone up, that the suicide hotline is increased by 25-fold, that domestic violence is increased, a lot of abuse, physical, sexual, and emotional is going on. I'm not talking about that. That's a whole different challenge.
Okay.
I'm just talking what we're going to address today is how to address a toxic scenario in your home. What's one thing you could do? What's one solution you could approach? And keep in mind that we're not suggesting you're going to solve someone else. This is how you can do it by taking responsibility for yourself. So we're going to share a story, a case study, along with a lot of details going into that case study. And as a side note, somewhat just to inform you, we've launched a new website that supports this. It's called himmerinstitute.com. This whole case study is put together in a format. Maybe you could address the format since you're pretty good at that.
So as content designer, we've taken what could be a one-day solution or a solution that you could sit down in one sitting in front of your computer and do a course that would help walk you through how and what you can do when you're dealing with a toxic relationship, especially in family. And then we'll talk about another course that we have that's more workplace related. But these are free courses on himmerinstitute.com where you can go and sign up and take this course. And we are building a whole curriculum of courses for emotional intelligence.
Yeah, so the backdrop there is I got my last master's degree and PhD all online. So on a course similar to this, Cheri, as a school teacher, especially with the quarantining, you do all your teaching using that process with Zoom. So we're going to take what we've both learned and done for so many years, and we're basically bringing all the material online, and we're introducing these courses complimentary to introduce you to them.
Yeah. And what's different than maybe listening to us on a podcast, which is fun, and I hope are fun, is that the course is going to prompt you to think. It's going to prompt you to act in certain places within the material. So if you're listening to what we're doing today, that's going to help you, and it's going to help you unzip even more what's in the course. It can be very complementary. But the course itself is going to give you that opportunity to reflect and act. And that's different because when you're driving your car and listening to a podcast, or you're out for a jog and listening to a podcast, you're just absorbing and you're contemplating. But this is going beyond contemplating.
Putting you into action.
Mm-hmm.
And the first course is called One Solution to Soften a Toxic Relationship at Home, and we're going to share it with you. So this will actually be part of the course.
Yeah, you're going to get some pieces of it. And then just know you can go deeper in the course.
So we're going to go through it this way. It starts out with our protagonist is Lori. No matter what she seemed to do, it was wrong. She just was having a rough go. Her efforts to help the teenagers with their homework usually ended in a shouting match. Even her second grader ran to Dad. Her siblings were out the door when Mom tried to help.
So yeah, they're all together, and this could be quarantine, right? And everybody wants to avoid her. Her husband avoided her like a contagious virus. Love the metaphor, with a buffer zone of one room. If she was in the living room, he was not. He would take an Uber around the house just to avoid catching the virus. He lost his voice in her presence years ago, and she's the only one who didn't see it.
I wrote this with a dozen or more people in mind. This is not unusual. I call it an invisible divorce, only because they live in the same home. They still love each other, at least their version of love, but they're not communicating. They're not connecting. And one will oftentimes lose his or her voice because the other one isn't aware that that's going on. This is pretty normal stuff. The question would be that, do you ever feel that way? Are you the one who's lost his or her voice, your voice? And the next question is, and this is a little bit more profound, are you just becoming aware perhaps that your spouse or children don't have a voice, that no one wants to talk around you? Do you have someone around you that fits the description on either side? And is it you, but you don't want to admit it? Most toxic people are not aware of their toxicity. They don't mean to be toxic, critical, or controlling. And they don't understand why people get offended when they are.
And they may not even be aware that they're offended. So take notice if there's avoidance happening too. So Lori has two parts to her challenge. She perceives she's right, and she's also hardwired to connect, and she's not being able to connect.
Before you move on, she might be right. The point that we're going to talk about here is it doesn't matter. If you're the one who feels that you're right, it just is irrelevant in the grand scheme of things if you're not connecting.
So it's interesting to see that when you take item number 2, hardwiring to connect, that's something that we all are driven towards, and we talk about a lot on this podcast. At birth, we are innately driven to attach and accept 3 entities. And we're going to take that of the 2 things that her challenges are and make it the priority.
So entity number 1, the first attachment is your mother. Remember, this comes at birth. The relationship between infants and their primary caregivers, which would be mother and father, is responsible for shaping the success or failure of future emotional and physical relationships. It impacts the infant's ability to maintain emotional balance and find their identity. In other words, their authentic self.
To live in acceptance means one can channel energy around or through the body or mind without collecting like a reservoir. Acceptance does not mean one agrees with you or the situation, but that one can be present and neutral while maintaining their identity.
For the past couple of years, I've shared my challenges growing up, and I would like, not that I'm looking for challenges, but Cheri, I would like you to speak to what it was like connecting with your mother. You know, she's passed away and your father's passed away. Mm-hmm. So just in a more of a reflective, I would like you to address, and we're going to do each one, mother, father, and then the parents as a singular unit. So what was Mom like for you?
So Mom was all warmth. And with us kids, she was extremely open-minded. She was very much our champion. And when we expressed the least bit of interest, she was all over that. She was trying to find resources for us and often would steer us towards resources or help provide them, but never force them. The only one thing I remember is that I wanted to take ballet and gymnastics like one of my sisters who was extremely gifted at it, and I was not because I couldn't turn a cartwheel to save the life of me. And
wasn't that
Mom,
more out of protection?
Well, see, that in a way, she was being a little protective, like, let's not see you fail this, but I really wanted it. And she saw that I was really gifted with music. And so, therefore, she steered me towards something that was definitely my strength.
That's an effective
So she saw us for who we were, and she was being very effective as a mother. Yeah. But I still was like, well, why didn't I get the gymnastics? Why didn't I? You know. And later, when I was a teen, I was like, well, Mom, there you go. I'm going to go pay for my own dance lessons and things like that. And I found a way to work dance in my life.
Dance isn't gymnastics, though.
And, you know, she accepted that. And she was she was really open to that. I played clarinet, and I signed up at one point to take voice lessons to help me with my breathing and my clarinet. And then I really enjoyed the voice lessons, and that became my instrument of choice. And my mom, she was willing to pay for them. I had sought out the teacher because she had already instilled in that we were always developing ourselves, and talents, performing arts talents was a big thing in our home. So I didn't know this until years later, but my mom thought it was really interesting how long my voice lessons would go. And my voice lesson teacher, she was really renowned. She would give me my lesson, and then she'd want to chat. And my mom thought, like, what's going on at these voice lessons? I did not know my mom was skeptical. She never gave an inkling of this. But years later, she told me that she had signed up with Miss Margaret Miles was her name, and took like a month's worth of voice lessons to find out what the heck was going on with my voice. Oh,
that's why she took the lessons. You had told me she'd taken the lessons, right, but I never knew why.
And I don't know if it was, I mean, most of it was behind, my mom was trying to figure out what was going on. She let me be independent. She had raised me to, by now I was like a senior in high school.
Yeah.
And I was driving myself to my lessons, and my mom handed me a check every week, and, she paid for them. But I didn't find out until I was adult that she was like checking up on me without letting me know. And I think that was pretty amazing and clever because she didn't want to step on my toes, but she was still being my mom, and that just warms my heart to this day. And when I found out about it, I thought, that's creepy. You checked up on me, but now that I'm a mom, I'm like,
but the way she checked up on you never infringed on your agency.
It didn't. And she felt fine. Whatever evidence she came from that, she concluded was like, Miss Margaret Miles is super chatty, but she's a really nice lady. And that woman had become my friend,
right.
Even though she was, much older. So my mom did some great things. Now,
that is a good story. I didn't know that.
Yeah. My dad.
Well, let me get to Dad. The second.
I was going to say, what my mom was, where she was open with us, she was not entirely always open with my dad.
And I'm going to go there on the third entity. That's parents, right? Mm-hmm. So just please, if I could have you hang on. The second entity is the father. The importance of the father cannot be overstated. Too many young girls, for example, and this would be going into coupling issues here, because I don't want to risk it.
When we say coupling, both. We don't mean couples. We're going to.
It's the way you understand it, contextually or non-contextually.
We're going to talk about chunks of things connected together and disconnected.
Too many young girls in this example become compromised during their early teenage years because they never connect with their fathers in their youth. And this is not only divorced or absentee fathers or abusive fathers. I'm talking about fathers who stay married, who are in the home, but do not know how to emotionally connect with their children. It is as adverse to that child when the dads who get stuck in their heads, who don't understand how to connect emotionally, that child, and particularly girls, when they don't have the connection with a male, will seek out any kind of male attention when they're older, especially into their teenage years, and will compromise their values at the expense of getting the 3 A's: affirmation, affection, and approval. Okay.
So do we want to break apart my dad?
Not yet. Let's just do a couple more here.
So little girls and little boys definitely crave the attention of their father. And the older they get, the stronger the drive is to connect. Experienced parents who are aware and have raised their children often comment on the tipping point when the child's attention would wane from the mother and wax towards the father.
So address that, what happened in our life, because we have 5 boys, right?
Okay. In our family. Well, being the mom of 5 boys, there's just a sweet thing that happens between mother and sons. My boys, I thoroughly enjoyed as babies, toddlers, every stage. Mm-hmm. There's nothing more fun to me than like a 9-year-old boy. As a teacher, I love that age, and I love even boys and girls that age because they're so highly inquisitive.
That's a great age.
But just Cub Scouts at 9 years old, it's the best. And then
things happen, right?
And then things happen. And